Thank you for joining us this morning. Just as you know, Harry's been very generous with his time over the last few days, as has Andrea. And Harry's going to have to catch a flight. And so we've got a hard stop at 10:40. So someone please stop us at 10:40 because I could just listen to Harry and have these conversations for a long time. Dean Pinkleton yesterday talked about how intense it is to have a conversation with Harry. And it's really because I think Harry is so present when you have a conversation with him, and that it can be, I don't know if it's intimidating or what, but you're
I'm
just
paying
there.
attention. I am paying attention.
Yeah. The theme is curiosity. So let's start there. You're now teaching as well. So can you teach curiosity? Are we born with curiosity? Is curiosity taught out of us at some point in our education and we have to relearn it? Let's start there.
So the whole curiosity thing for me, when I retired a year ago on 3 different broadcasts, I said, I'm going to my alma mater, tiny little Central College in Iowa, and I'm going to teach a course on curiosity. That was kind of shorthand for what I was going to teach, because it's also about adaptability and resilience, mindfulness without meditation. It's just like how open you need to be to live in the world and succeed, not only in a personal life, but in a professional life. So in the meantime, as I'm getting ready to teach this course last fall, I did a pretty good dive into the subject of curiosity. And oddly enough, as a subject, it's not been that deeply researched. There's sort of a couple of seminal studies that have been done over time. Some of them stand up. Some of them are like, maybe not so much. Some people say there's 5 kinds. Other people say there's 3 kinds. And I think there are really 2. Keeps it pretty simple. One is intrinsic, and that's I'm just curious and I want to know because I want to know. And I like to know. And my life is better and my life is richer because I found this out. That's the intrinsic kind. The extrinsic is I got an A, and 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 I got an A, right? You got these good grades because you knew if you did the work to look up the stuff that you'd get a reward for it. So that's extrinsic. And I think most of you in this room who got grades enough to get into this college had to exhibit some extrinsic amount of curiosity. It also happens in the workforce, right? Well, they told me I have to do this thing next week, and I don't know anything about whatever this thing is, and so you either jump into it because you know you're going to get rewarded for it, right? So it's almost a split brain kind of deal, right? Because one is I'm going to get reward, I'm going to get paid, I'm going to get A's, I'm going to get whatever. I'm going to get that bean that comes out of the thing because I've gone through the maze. Versus the intrinsic one is the one, to me, that has the super crazy value, right? It leads to things like transcendence. What happens who likes music? Oh, have you ever been to a concert when, like, you cried or you had goosebumps? That kind of thing, that idea of transcendent, comes from a kind of openness inside and allowing yourself to feel stuff. So I think this idea of the intrinsic curiosity and that open mind, open heart, I know it sounds like ugh. Like you're so chewy and you're so like, you eat granola and you must wear Birkenstocks, but there's a real part of this to me, and especially as reporters, like we had such a good chat yesterday. that kind of, if you can use that along with the extrinsic, because you're going to get an assignment to go do X, Y, or Z, but if your curiosity is wider than just, well, I need to get this, I need to get that, need to get that. And when you can meet that person who is your subject and allow them and allow yourself to just get to know each other a little bit, even just in quotation marks, that has phenomenal dividends. Any human interactions have phenomenal dividends. You don't need to know that you're going to get a reward for it, right? It's not about getting an A or getting a paycheck, right? Sometimes I'm so thrilled, for instance, when I got to know some of the stuff that happens here and as you engineer some of this stuff, I find that thrilling. I find that absolutely thrilling. And the more I found out about it, the more excited I was about it. When I gave my speech yesterday, I had this lucky moment because I was this pile of kindling of curiosity that someone lit a match to. And it's been, it's been ablaze ever since. And I think for this line of work, you have to have it. I mean, if you don't have to have it. I can go back. You don't have to have it. But if you have it, the career that you may have as a result can be crazy rewarding, and as Andrew was talking about, can take you places you never thought you might go before. It's really it's powerful stuff, really, really powerful stuff. And we don't, honestly, you can read up on curiosity and go, really, that's it? We don't know all that much about it. But I guess in the end of the day, I'll try to wrap this up, this question, because it ends up this tome. If you can find the pleasure in that intrinsic curiosity, a lot of other stuff kind of falls into place, I find, right? Just that, I never knew that. That's so cool, right? It was interesting, I had a mix of intrinsic and extrinsic curiosity about Ed Murrow. And Bruce calls and says, you're going to get this award. And I go, not me. And it was fun. It's fun when you realize that it's an adventure. And I found old documentaries. I found a BBC documentary about Ed Murrow, which was fantastic, right? It's just, I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. Yeah. And I'm not even sure I referenced him yesterday in the speech. But you put those things in your brain, and it helps you, in the end, say what you want to say. I'm prattling. I apologize.
No, that's great answer. Let me ask you about another form of curiosity that I think, and I need to know where this lies on the intrinsic, extrinsic spectrum, but curiosity is as an act of empathy. I'm curious about you, but in order for me to really learn about you, I have to go in some difficult places to try to understand you. And so much of your stories seem not just curiosity, like how does this machine work, but how does this human machine work? And I wonder what you think about empathy as it connects to curiosity.
I was so fortunate to be in a line of work, especially the last dozen or more years, 15, 20 years, where I was in places where I was given the license to be me. That was earned over time, and I could exercise that right more and more of having that privilege and that permission. It pays crazy dividends when you're first starting out, there are expectations. Can you do the story? Can you get the who, what, when, where, how, why? Can you get that? Can you do that? if you can do it and do it and do it and do it, that ends up earning you license. So that when you come back after you've earned trust in the newsroom, that story that you really want to pitch, that you really care about, you'll be listened to more. I mean, none of this stuff is in the HR manual. It doesn't exist. This is the actual real life aspect of what life is like in a newsroom. I guess I think I've always had empathy, and some of it comes from a bunch of different things, not all of which were, I had a great mom who was really empathetic, but there are things that have happened in my own life that made me less of an ego-driven person, like troubles. I've been shrunk many a time, like hit roadblocks where I need to talk to somebody. So that whole idea of mental health, oh yeah. Oddly enough, that sort of kind of coming to grips, and I've never talked about this before, coming to grips with your own pain makes you, when you can come to grips with it, actually makes you more vulnerable in a great way, in a really great way. So that when you're having a conversation with somebody, you don't have to say, oh yeah, I got that too. But when I'm talking to you and you're telling me something and you can see my eyes responding what's coming out of your mouth, you know, I know. And then you tell me stuff. I mean, it's not nasty. It's what I said, part of what I was talking about yesterday. You tell me your story. My moral responsibility is to you to tell your story. It's not my story, it's your story. So that's a little bit long way to get to what you're talking about. Yeah. But heck yes, right? That empathy and it, you know, honestly, you can be in a zoning board meeting and it's just the guy who says, well, the law says his fence can't be that high. And, you know, can he not see whatever it is he wants to see, or is he just pissed off, or who knows what? But what we know about in our society now over the last 10 years or so, people are hungry to be seen. People are hungry to be heard. And as reporters, we're in a pretty cool position to be one of those kinds of people.
We've seen this unfortunate trend of weaponizing what I think of as false curiosity, where I'm going to ask a question, having already determined what the answer is going to be. And all I'm doing, I'm just asking questions here. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was something going on in the basement of that pizza parlor in D.C.
In Washington, D.C., yeah.
Maybe the stories that Murrow reported from Buchenwald, maybe it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And there can be a weaponization of curiosity that we've seen maybe just really in the last 10 years. And I wonder how you address that, which is I'm just asking questions. I'm just being curious, even though we know that there is that deep agenda behind it.
You know, as the internet was expanding, people said, well, what about, you know, what's going to happen in the news and what's going to happen to papers and blah, 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 blah. And I've always, this is a sort of a broader answer for a bigger audience, but we have the opportunity to be real consumers of news. And we don't have to just get what we want from a given source. So on that larger level, you know, I read all kinds of stuff. And I read lots of stuff that I don't agree with. But I'm smart enough not to go down a wormhole. And you're talking about that part of that larger electronic world that doesn't give a shit about you. It's only about them and the eyeballs and the hits. And quite honestly, the ego that they get out of it and sometimes the money. So I don't know how to go around in the world as an evangelist to say, just turn off your phone. Just don't get on the internet when you get home. Because so many people, I mean, one of your grads has written a book about disinformation and how to sort of get yourself off of that. Because it's a Jones. It ends up being a Jones. You start going down that stuff, and yeah, you end up in the basement of the pizza place in Washington, D.C., and you're going to kill somebody. So, yeah, we live in a world of that. And the other thing, well, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. Keep asking questions.
Well, I'm
And
take
there's
you,
one more
I'm going to take you down a related point, which there is a sense of real frustration in parts of America. You mentioned it with Katrina. You know, there are problems with government. There's problems with society. Stephen Hawking talked about the multiverse. And was there ever a universe out there where Harry Smith just got angry, got frustrated, and weaponized that anger and that frustration, utilizing your skills? You could have made a fortune in the manosphere, tapping into that anger.
Because I worked on a farm, and I can drive a pickup truck, and I can drive a tractor, and I know how to load trucks. And I worked on a market in Chicago where every drug that you wanted to have that was available in the universe, there was prostitution. It was crazy. It was Manville, right? It was man. I was a part of the man universe. Yep. The guys I worked with, one guy had done time for manslaughter. The other guy's nickname was Outlaw. He had a gun in one pocket and a pint in the other pocket, right? I lived that life. And it's funny to see that now, this kind of, I'm a man thing. I think maybe in the end of the day, and I'm not answering your question at all, but the more we know about history, the more we sort of understand there's always this gravitational pull to some not so pleasant base, right? I think about Roger Williams being kicked out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony because he didn't agree with the Church of England, right? No, go start your own state. The state of Maryland was made for Catholics because Catholics, the people who were in America, the colonists, they effing hated Catholics. Over time, the Ku Klux Klan was a holy trinity of hatred, all right? They hated black people. Who else did they hate? Come on. Jews and Catholics, especially Italians and Irishmen, right? Think about that. And these people were the pillars of the community. So I think my fear is that over time these things kind of grow dormant, but then they just rise back up again. And it depends, listen, you've got a guy like Rupert Murdoch who's just saying, I can't make any more money than I'm making right now based on a kind of foolishness. I want it back the way it used to be. And some of that is part of the myth of, wow, people had jobs, and they had union jobs, and they worked in steel mills, and they had a station wagon in the driveway and a bass boat right next to it, and can't we all just be great? But if you were a person of color, that wasn't so great, because you weren't getting a job, and you weren't going to be in a newsroom, and you weren't going to rise to be a CEO of a company, right? So these social changes and the dynamics of all of this, it's always in a state of flux. And yeah, I might have been pretty good at that. I could have been one of those dudes, right?
There's a lot of money in it.
I could have been Joe Rogan.
Yep.
So I listened to Joe Rogan the other day, and he's on talking to this guy about mixed martial arts. And they just went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I thought, wow. And what did he get paid? $250 million to go to, right? We're in a kind of a tough space. You know, we're just out here, we were just little truth tellers. That's all we're trying to do is tell some truth. We're not, I'm just curious about that. I'm not just curious about that. We're actually going to tell you something maybe you need to know. Maybe you don't want to know, but maybe you need to know. So yeah, in that atmosphere that we're in now, they actually have the upper hand, I'd say, to a great extent. Because people tend to gravitate to the things they feel comfortable with, right? So DEI, boy, that just makes me uncomfortable. And I'm like, are you kidding? Rahima Ellis is a black correspondent for NBC News, and we were having a chat about this within the last year. And I'm always been an advocate is we can't know enough history. And the better we are at understanding our history, that makes us just better people and wiser people. And she said, well, you know, when you go to the doctor and you have to just fill out pages and pages and pages and pages and pages, and they want to know your history, and have you ever had this, and have you ever had that, and did you ever do this? What about your parents? What did your parents? She said, why do they want to know everything about your history? Because they want to make you well. And so this boogeyman of DEI and, you know, we don't want our kids to feel bad about our history. Come on, man. That's all, that's just so much baloney. It's baloney. It's smoke and mirrors.
I can't end on that note with the great Harry Smith taking him down a dark path. So
you know what?
I want to walk
So
back from
I
that.
expect to be canceled. I mean, after this speech and I see it's being recorded, I'm so screwed. I am so completely screwed. They'll be like, well, and yeah, and that guy, that old washed up bald guy, he's telling those students he's brainwashing those kids at Washington State. Anyway, go ahead.
So I want to go back. We're going to come full circle to curiosity. And you're teaching a class on curiosity, so I think I know the answer on this. I've got kids at home. My 3-year-old asks just way too many questions.
Yeah,
Questions all the time, usually about dinosaurs or deadly predators, you know. But they just keep asking questions.
Yeah.
And at some point in our lives, that gets knocked out of us, right? We're taught to give answers, sort of regurgitate information instead of ask questions. Can we really reteach curiosity at that point? Or maybe what gets lost when we stop asking genuine questions?
That's so good. That's really good. There's stuff that we know, for instance, about art. If you're 4 years old and somebody says, are you an artist? Oh, you know, look at my drawings and look at all this stuff I have. And by the time the kids are in grammar school, and if you walk into a grammar school classroom and you say, who loves art? Like 3 hands will go up. The kids that were all artists, what you just talked about, it's been, well, no one, well, you know, you draw outside the lines. Well, nobody's telling them, you could be Jackson Pollock. But that's part of what's wrong in the culture in the end of the day. You think about the things that are, I don't know how I short-circuited along the way. Because I used to think I was pretty smart. And we used to have a test called boy, I'm really going off script here. The Iowa Test of Basic Skills. And I was like a little kid in grammar school. And somehow I got a hold of it. And they said, well, he tests like an 8th grader. But I didn't get into the accelerated class in junior high. So I said, well, screw that. And I was done. So I was done until my junior in high school, and somebody handed me a copy of a book and said, read that. and then it got lit up again. So I don't know what it is about how we teach. Listen, one of the things I know for sure is as a society or as part of the culture said, well, we need the data, we need to quantify how the kids are doing. So how many schools have I been in where they just teach to the test, right? And so when I went to teach college last fall, every kid that in the class, they could read an assignment and spit out the answers in a nanosecond. And I said, that's not what this class is. You need to read this, but then you need to tell me what you think about it. And so just as that's what your battle, that's going to be your personal battle as a father, is how do I keep my kids away from thinking that the most important thing they can do is be extrinsic and get good answers on their grades so they can go to whatever college they want to, as opposed to, Dad, I think I'd really rather just muck around in the pond and sort of look at the pollywogs and, hear the peepers and stuff. Yeah, because you can't do that. I don't know how you do that, Dad.
Well, this has been such a great visit, Harry, and my neighbor Tim wanted to be here, recently widowed, couldn't make it because he's been dealing with some health issues. And I said, do you want me to ask Harry a question? And he said, no, just tell Harry we need more storytellers like him. And we need Harry to keep telling stories. And so, there you go, off we go. But just closing thoughts on how we replicate this curiosity and what you mix together.
So I think about you as students, and I'm really knocked out by faculty here that it reminds me a lot of my little liberal arts college, because the faculty really cares about you. They really want to see you succeed. And I've been so impressed by that. The universe that I came through, I'll never forget, here's the best part. So 1986, January 2nd, January 1st, 1986, I take my job as a reporter for CBS News, for the network. I've made it. I'm working with an old crew that's been there, started in the 50s or 60s. And this camera guy turns to me and says, well, you really missed it. It's not as good as it used to be. We really had the great years. We had the great years of television are over. That's exactly what he said to me. And I thought, oh, I must have missed the boat. But if there's a little water left, I'm going to paddle like crazy to make sure that I get some of what's left. Your world has changed in 1 trillion different ways from the world that I started in. And just even talking with some of your fellows yesterday as they're out reporting in these places, incredible. It's a different universe, but what they're doing is so important, and I hope for them so fulfilling. Being a reporter can be one of the greatest things in the world. And so I just say, as I had a professor in college who at the end of every class, she would say, go forth and do great things. So go forth and do great things.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Harry.